Jeff Bartley, and it's great to be here with you today. I'm going to be joined on stage by Nits Jagannathan, and I'm a product manager on the AWS DataSync team. Nits is a product manager on the AWS Snow family. We're excited to talk to you today about how you can use these products to accelerate your data migration into AWS. So if you've ever tried to move a lot of data, ever done a large-scale data migration, you know that there's a lot of work involved there, right? You need to think about things of managing your own scripts, things like encrypting and validating your data. You know, is your data getting to where you need it to be, byte for byte? You need to think about recovering from errors. That can be complex depending upon how much data you're dealing with. You need to think about things like network availability. How much bandwidth do you have? How well is your network functioning? All those kind of things. And then you also want to ensure performance, right? You want to move your data quickly. Well, all of these things can be complex, especially at scale when you're talking about millions or billions of files or terabytes or petabytes of data. There's a lot of things you need to think about. Well, some of the other things you need to think about are when you're moving data, are you going to approach it from an online perspective or from an offline perspective? If you're going to go online, you want to think about things about what kind of network bandwidth do you have available to you? Are you going to go over the WAN? Are you going to go over your internet? Maybe you can go using an AWS Direct Connect connection. You also want to think about things about how is that data going to land? How are you going to move that data? But one of the nice things about it is when you're moving offline, that data is going to land in AWS right away. Now, if you're thinking about offline data transfers, you're usually thinking about this because maybe you have less bandwidth available, or you just need to reserve that bandwidth for other functions, some of that network bandwidth. So typically when you're dealing with offline types of data transfers, you're usually going to be dealing with physical devices. So you want to make sure you're leaving time and capability and people to be able to handle those physical devices. And then you also want to think about the work that you're going to need to do to get the data onto the device and then ship it back when you're done. And of course, because the device has to be shipped back, when it arrives, typically there's going to be some kind of offload and you need to plan for that time. Well, today we're going to focus on AWS DataSync and the AWS Snow family, which are really there to help our customers move large amounts of data into AWS. And AWS DataSync is really focused on online data transfers over the network, whereas AWS Snow family is there for offline data transfer for customers who need to do those large-scale data movements, but maybe don't have the network bandwidth available to be able to move all of that data. And this is just, we like to give this chart to our customers because it helps them understand, you know, if I've got a certain amount of data and I've got a certain amount of network bandwidth available, what do I think about from which service should I use, whether I should use Snow or whether I should use DataSync. And so you can see from this chart, if you've got low bandwidth, maybe on a single gigabit per second type connection, you've got a lot of data, it's going to take a long time to move that data over the network. In that case, something like AWS Snow family services are going to be a better option. Whereas if you're looking at something where you have a lot of bandwidth, 10 gigabits per second, and even if you've got petabytes of data, online data transfer using DataSync is a great option for you. So let's dive a little bit into DataSync and talk about that service. So DataSync, as I've already mentioned, is an online data transfer service, and we're really focused on trying to make that data migration as simple as possible for our customers. Now, of course, moving data is something that you want to do quickly, and so DataSync is built from the ground up to be fast. We use a custom native protocol that we've built. It's parallel transfers, and so it provides really fast performance for our customers. It's designed to be easy to use. We try to eliminate a lot of that overhead that I talked about in the beginning of dealing with large-scale data transfers. DataSync takes care of a lot of that for you. Security is job one here at AWS, and so DataSync is built to be both secure and reliable. We do encryption in flight and support encryption at rest where possible. And then all data can be validated in flight and at rest, byte for byte, so you can be sure that your data arrived safely and securely. DataSync is a fully managed service, so when we talk about that, we're talking about DataSync's ability to connect easily to various AWS storage services such as S3, EFS, or FSx. Again, removes a lot of that heavy lifting typically associated with connecting your on-prem storage up into the AWS networks. And then finally, DataSync is built to be cost efficient at 1.25 cents per gigabyte of data transferred. It's significantly cheaper than a lot of other commercial solutions out there. So what are some of the use cases? So as we go out and we talk to customers that are using DataSync, frequently we see them using DataSync for kind of one of four purposes. The first is they're looking to migrate their data. So they've got applications. Those applications typically use data, and that data is typically associated with something like a file system or maybe an object storage system on premises, and customers want to move that application and its data up into AWS. Well, that's where DataSync comes in, gives them the ability to move that data along with their applications up into the cloud. Now, a lot of customers have data on premises that's cold. It's data that's been sitting there for a really long time. It's not accessed very often, but customers are looking to move that data so that they can free up their on-premises storage capacity and make it available in other ways. And this is, again, where DataSync can come in, can help customers move their data up into the cloud, take advantage of low-cost, highly durable storage like S3, and then free up that capacity on premises. A lot of customers are using DataSync as well to replicate their data up into AWS. So they want to maintain their data on premises, but they want to make a second copy of it in the cloud, maybe for disaster recovery purposes or for just general kind of backup purposes. And so DataSync has built-in scheduling and gives customers the ability to do that ongoing replication with their data and bring it up into the cloud. And then finally, I've got a lot of customers who are using DataSync today for these ongoing type of data movement workflows. And a great example is in the life sciences market, where we have a lot of customers who have genome sequencers or other medical type devices on premises that are generating a lot of data. And they want to bring that data up into the cloud and do additional processing on it. But they need to be able to move that data and move it quickly. Again, this is where DataSync comes into play. As that data comes off of those devices, comes into local storage, they can use DataSync to copy it up into the cloud and, again, take advantage of the processing capabilities that AWS offers. Okay, so what are some of the things that you can do with DataSync? Well, really, it comes down to three general areas. So the first is being able to use DataSync for transfers between on-premises storage and AWS. So DataSync supports storage that talks very common protocols like NFS or SMB. These are file servers, Windows servers, NAS servers, things like that. We also support object storage systems that speak the S3 API protocol. And then we recently added support for Hadoop clusters, where customers can use DataSync to copy data from their Hadoop clusters on premises up into AWS, maybe to populate their data lakes or do further analysis and processing in the cloud. DataSync also has a presence at the edge. So DataSync comes built in with AWS Snowcone devices, which Nitz is going to talk about here in a little bit. And we also enable customers to copy data between their S3 on Outpost buckets, running on Outposts, into AWS, into S3. And then finally, we have a lot of customers using DataSync today to copy between AWS storage services, whether it's between S3 buckets or from EFS to FSX. Any combination of those services that AWS or that DataSync supports today, you can use to copy between those. It's super fast and easy. So going a little bit deeper on those on-premises transfers. So the way that DataSync talks to your on-premises storage is utilizing an agent, which is a virtual machine that you install in your virtual machine environment. We support VMware, KVM, or Hyper-V. And then once those agents are installed, they connect to your on-premises storage using those common protocols that I mentioned earlier. And then the agent sends data up into the cloud to our AWS DataSync service, which then takes care of copying that data up to the storage services that we support, such as S3, EFS, and FSX. Now, we have a number of network endpoints that you can use to connect your agent up to AWS. We support private endpoints for customers who are utilizing Direct Connect or VPN and want to make sure that data transfer traffic is always staying within their network. We also support public endpoints, so for customers who either don't have that connectivity or maybe just want to utilize their internet bandwidth, you can use DataSync for that as well. And then we also support FIPS endpoints for customers who need that level of compliance. Now for in-cloud transfers, like I was talking about earlier, the nice thing about data sync in this case is that no agent is required. There's no infrastructure required to be managed within AWS. You can use data sync to copy between your storage services, either in the same region or across regions, and there's no infrastructure to manage. You just fire up the data sync console or use the API, run your task, and it's really easy to get started. And like all data sync transfers, all that data is encrypted in flight using TLS 1.2. So Takara Bio was one data sync customer that was looking to build out their data lake capabilities on Amazon S3 in the cloud. And they were using these genome sequencers on premises to generate lots and lots of data, but they needed a way to get that data quickly up into S3 so they could run their analytics workloads up in the cloud. And so they utilized data sync to move that data, move it into multiple regions, build out their data lakes, and they really sped up the time to analysis for their genome workloads. Formula One is another data sync customer. They have a lot of racing video footage, and in fact, they had a 400 terabyte archive of video footage, and they were worried about keeping that video footage safe. And so what they were looking to do was copy that data up into, again, Amazon S3. They wanted to make a second copy of that data, and so they utilized data sync for that first time copy, and then they continued to use data sync for ongoing data transfers. So as new video footage came in, they used data sync to make a second copy of that data up into Amazon S3, giving them not only that initial archive, but the ongoing protection of their data in the cloud as well.
Thank you, Jeff, for the wonderful insights on data migration and how customers can use data sync for online data transfer. Hi, my name is Nitsh Jagannathan, and I'm a product manager in the Snow Services family. And today I'm going to talk about how Snow family gives you the tools for doing your offline data migration. So Snow family purpose actually has two broad use cases. One, we provide a rugged edge compute box where you can deploy them into a partially connected or a completely disconnected environments, and you can run your edge compute workloads. Let's say, for instance, if you want to run an EC2 compatible ARMY to clean up your data before you want to copy the data to the Snow device, you can potentially do that, or you can do like AAML workloads on these devices. The other use case is offline data movement, and that's the core of our conversation today, where we provide you a rugged Snow device box to you, and you can copy data onto it once it reaches your premises, and you can ship the device back to AWS, and we will copy into your S3 buckets on your behalf. And for this, you don't really need to have any internet on your end. So this is why it's an offline data movement. Snow family in general has two broad class of devices. One is a rugged Snowball Edge storage optimized device, and it weighs about 50 pounds. It has 80 terabytes of storage, and it costs roughly about $300 in the US or in the North American region to use these storage optimized devices. And usually customers who are moving petabytes of data pick Snowball storage optimized devices to move data from your on-premises to AWS. The other class of Snow products are the Snow Cone class of products, which is either, we have two offers. One is Snow Cone, the HDD, which is 8 terabytes of storage, and you have the Snow Cone SSD, which is 14 terabytes of storage. And you can use this for small ongoing data transfer. If you want to move, let's say, from your self-driving vehicle, like far remote, and you want to move the data from the vehicle to AWS, you can use Snow Cone SSDs. So because Snow class of product is actually a physical device that we have to ship from AWS and it has to come to your space, we are going to spend some time talking about the entire cycle of how this whole data migration happens with Snow. So we start with on the left-hand side where the customer comes in and places a Snow order on the AWS Snow Management Console. Once you place the Snow order, depending on the inventory availability and also where you're located and the shipment time, it could take upwards of a week for the device to get to your location. And then once the device reaches you, you can use either a CLI, the command line interface tool, or you can use an AWS OPSA, which is a user interface tool, to copy data from your on-premises onto the Snowball device. And the amount of time the data taken to copy into Snowball depends upon your data set. If you have large files, let's say like 50 megabytes, and like you want to copy it, the data transfer is usually very fast. But on the other hand, if you have millions of small files, let's say like 4 kilobytes or so, it's going to take longer to copy onto the Snow device. And when you are done copying onto the Snow device, you ship the device back to AWS. And once we have verified the integrity of the device and make sure that it's not damaged during transport, and we verify that the data is all there, we copy it from the Snow device onto the S3, your S3 buckets. And the amount of time, again, it takes for us to copy from the Snow device into S3 depends upon your data set again. How much ever time it takes for you to copy onto the Snow device, it'll be very similar in terms of how we can move that into your S3 buckets. So finally, after we have verified that like we have copied all the S3 data into your buckets, we essentially do a secure cleanup of all data that is stored on the device, so that like none of your data is actually left on the Snow devices at all after a job is completed. So for this, because there is logistics involved and we have to ship the device back and forth, we recommend our customers not to delete your source data till you have verified that all your data has been copied onto your S3 buckets. And then you can go ahead and clean it up at your end. And essentially, this end-to-end process could take up to like 2 weeks, and it could take longer depending on your data set. So now that we have talked about how you do offline data migration, I want to touch about how you can use Snow and DataSync together and into your data migration plans. So the typical use case is when you have a large set of data that you need to move, which is essentially in petabytes, but then you have ongoing data that you are generating as well. So what you could do is that you could potentially use Snowball Edge devices to move your petabytes of data into your S3 buckets to seed, and then you can start using DataSync. Whether you can install a DataSync agent directly on your premises for ongoing data transfer, or you could potentially use a Snow Cone, which comes with DataSync agent already installed. And then you can use the same mechanism where you can use Snowball Edge for large data transfer and then Snow Cone for ongoing data transfer with DataSync. So essentially, it's a better together story. We want to be able to provide you both the online option and offline option with the Snow platform. So just to bring it all together, essentially, like AWS wants to provide you tools for both offline and online data transfer. And how much you want to be able to use, whether offline or online, depends upon like 3 parameters. How much network throughput you have on your end, what is your data size, and also how fast or like what's your time duration for your project. So Snow and DataSync work together to give you options in order to be able to help you with your data migration projects. With that, like you can get started with your DataSync or Snow Cone by going to these locations, and then you can get started.
I'm continually wowed, blow my mind button, like petabyte scale migration, data lake migrations.
Absolutely.
Online, offline options to help customers do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other thing that stood out was, even throughout, not just that session, but throughout today, was healthcare, genomics, finance, banks, entertainment. Like you said, you're a car guy. I've heard NASCAR and Formula One today.
Yes.
Right? Like all different industries are using the migration services and S3, and it's not just S3 either, right? It's EFS for file storage, FSX for Windows, FSX for Lustre for file storage, and then EBS as well, right? So the whole portfolio of storage services.
Absolutely.
It's been kind of eye-opening again. I live and breathe it every day, but I still, like I said, I learn things.
Yes.
Every session today, I've learned things. So I've got one question is, the services are great for data lakes, right? So migrating data to the cloud is great for use cases like building data lake and running analytics. We touched on data lake on DataSync a little bit, but how do you use DataSync to build a data lake on S3?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, DataSync actually has a number of options available, but it's, the thing about data lakes is it's a lot of data, and customers just have tons and tons of data out there, and a lot of that is sitting on premises today. So as I was talking about, right, DataSync gives you the ability to connect to your on-premises storage using common protocols, NFS, SMB, HDFS, or S3, and then helps you get that data quickly up into S3. We talked about encryption capabilities, data validation, which is super critical, particularly when you're building your data lakes, right? You want to make sure your data is going to land in the cloud properly and securely, right? And then on top of that, we have scheduling and other capabilities built into DataSync that make it super easy for our customers to move data into the cloud onto S3. And then the great thing is once that data is in S3, as you guys have been talking about all day long, right, they now have that ability to access things like analytics services, AI ML services, all of these really great services that AWS provides that gives customers the ability to make sense of all that data that they've now collected in S3.
Yeah, I mean, it's just super interesting. I mean, just being able to like put your data on S3 is just really simple to do. It's not a heavy lift for customers. One thing, I have a question. So these Snowball devices, they're very powerful in moving offline data to S3. Can you talk a little bit about how you can use multiple Snowball devices to increase your migration velocity?
Question. So one of the things that we are aware of, like customers who are trying to move petabytes of data would need multiple Snowball devices in order for you to be able to move the data, right? We are aware, we are cognizant of that. And we also have to try to balance between our inventory so that like everybody who wants to move it have enough devices available. So we essentially provide a service limit of 5 for customers to begin with. And then like customers can order up to 5 devices. And then if they want more than that, then we usually like require, like going through your sales team support or account team to increase the service limit. This allows for like, more distribution of the Snow devices equally. And we want, that also helps make sure that like customers who are have a higher priority need gets those Snow devices and the right time. But multiple Snow devices you can order on the console today.
But 5 devices, that's a lot of devices, right?
It's a lot.
And that's a lot of storage.
I know it's 400 terabytes. It's at one time you can move. Yeah.
400 terabytes, that's a lot of data.
I've got petabytes on premises today. Like, they don't know where to start. They're trying to figure out, what's the best way. Is it data sync? How much of it would go on data sync? How much of it would go on Snowball? Like, how do they decide that? Is there any help available from AWS to help them make those decisions, to kind of put together almost like a migration plan to help them, do it whether they have a timing deadline, a project deadline? How do we help them be successful?
Definitely at that scale, planning is critical, right? You really want to understand what data do you have, what needs to be moved, and maybe what doesn't need to be moved. Because often, a lot of the data that's on premises, sometimes I work with customers and they're like, we got this stuff that we don't want to move, right? And again, DataSync has built-in filtering that helps customers filter out that data and not copy it. But you're absolutely right. Planning is critical, and AWS provides a lot of different options for our customers. So one of them is that we have partners in our partner program that can give customers the ability to take advantage of those migration services that these partners they're really focused on migration. It can be a great resource. Another option is AWS professional services. So we have large teams that are really focused on helping our customers really execute that planning with best practices and take advantage of all the services that we provide like Snow and DataSync. And of course, you have your account teams, your SAs, your account managers, folks that are ready to help you regardless of the scale of your migration. But definitely planning is the most important and key thing.
I agree, Jeff. I think working with your account team and your sales team to coordinate a plan is going to be the best way forward.
Absolutely.
The theme was migration, but it wasn't just migration, because you can use DataSync for connecting S3 and Outpost, right? Customers have use cases where they have compliance requirements or latency requirements, where they have to have data on premises in their own environment, whether it's for location reasons or whatnot. But I think you said you could use DataSync to link different S3 and Outpost devices. Was that right?
Cloud, it's on premises, it's also at the edge. And so we want to be able to give customers the ability to move their data where it needs to be.
And we forgot to ask, what's your favorite pies, guys?
It's
For me, apple pie.
apple pie, huh? I love cherry pie. It's a no-brainer for me. Cherry pie all the way.
We've had a lot of different, we even had pizza pie. I don't know if pizza pie qualifies as pie, but
I don't know.
I don't know. We'll have to go to the rule book for that one later.
Yeah.